When destiny calls, it does not arrive gently. It enters as disturbance, as restlessness, as a crack in the carefully constructed identity we call our life. True love is never convenient because it is not meant to preserve who you think you are. It is meant to confront who you have been avoiding. Most people believe love is a choice made by the conscious mind. But the deepest love does not begin there. It begins in the unconscious long before logic is invited into the room. You do not decide to love at this level. You recognize something ancient, something familiar, as if a forgotten part of your soul has suddenly found its mirror in another human being. This is why true love feels inevitable. You may resist it, you may deny it, you may even run from it. Yet resistance only intensifies its pull, because what you are truly resisting is not the other person, but the transformation they demand from you. Destiny calls when the psyche is ready to evolve, and love becomes the messenger of that call. True love exposes the shadow. It reveals the wounds you buried, the fears you disguised as independence, and the defenses you called strength. The beloved does not create these fractures, they illuminate them. And this illumination is terrifying. Many confuse this fear for incompatibility, not realizing it is the ego fighting for survival. When destiny calls, circumstances rearrange themselves in unsettling ways. Timing collapses. Distance becomes irrelevant. Obstacles appear not to prevent love, but to test the depth of one's willingness to grow. If the connection is genuine, no external force can destroy it. Only inner refusal can delay it. This is why true love feels fated. Not because it is written in the stars, but because it is written in the psyche. Two inner worlds recognize each other as unfinished parts of the same story. And once this recognition occurs, separation becomes psychological tension rather than peace. When destiny calls, love demands courage, not romance. It asks for honesty, not fantasy. It insists on integration, not escape. And those who answer this call are never the same again. They may lose certainty, comfort, and illusion, but they gain wholeness, because true love is not meant to make life easier. It is meant to make life real. True love does not announce itself through logic or careful evaluation. It does not arrive with reasons neatly arranged or justifications that satisfy the rational mind. Instead, it emerges quietly from the unconscious, long before thought is given permission to intervene. This is why people often say love happens to them rather than being something they deliberately choose. The experience precedes explanation. The mind scrambles to catch up with a feeling that has already taken root in deeper psychic soil. The unconscious holds the forgotten, the suppressed, and the unrealized parts of the self. It carries emotional memories, unmet needs, and unexpressed longings that the rational mind has learned to manage, control, or deny. When true love begins, it does so by activating these hidden layers. A person suddenly feels drawn to someone without fully understanding why. The attraction may seem irrational, even disruptive, because it bypasses conscious preferences and social calculations. What is being recognized is not a checklist of traits, but a symbolic resonance between inner worlds. This resonance often feels strangely familiar. People describe it as if they have known the other person before, even when they have not. This familiarity does not come from shared history, but from internal recognition. The unconscious identifies in the other what has been missing or dormant within the self. In this sense, true love is less about the other person alone, and more about an encounter with one's own inner reality reflected outward. The rational mind, which is designed to maintain stability and predict outcomes, frequently resists this process. It asks practical questions, raises objections, and highlights risks. Yet these objections rarely dissolve the feeling itself. This is because the rational mind operates on surface-level information, while true love is rooted in deeper psychological patterns. Logic can explain behavior, but it cannot extinguish a call that originates from the core of the psyche. Because true love begins unconsciously, it often disrupts existing identities. The roles a person has learned to inhabit, strong, independent, detached, controlled, begin to crack under the pressure of emotional truth. The unconscious does not negotiate politely. It demands attention through longing, anxiety, joy, and fear. Love becomes the force that exposes the distance between who one pretends to be and who one actually is. This is also why true love brings vulnerability for security. Before trust is built, there is unease. Before union, there is uncertainty. The unconscious opens doors that the rational mind would have preferred to keep closed. Past wounds surface. Old defenses weaken. What was once manageable becomes emotionally charged. Yet this discomfort is not a flaw in love, it is evidence of its depth. Only what touches the unconscious has the power to transform. Over time, the rational mind may attempt to claim ownership of love, framing it as choice, commitment, or decision. But these come later. They are structures built around something that already exists. True love is not created by reasoning, it is recognized by feeling. It begins in the depths, where meaning forms before words, where connection precedes understanding, and where the soul responds long before the mind can explain why. Destiny rarely enters life as reassurance or ease. It does not arrive wrapped in certainty or aligned with comfort. Instead, it announces itself through disruption, unsettling the patterns that once felt stable and familiar. What people often call destiny is not a gentle guide, but a force that interrupts the trajectory of the ego, demanding movement where stagnation once felt safe. Comfort preserves what already exists. Destiny insists on change. Human beings naturally seek stability. The mind constructs routines, beliefs, and identities that make life predictable and manageable. Within these structures, one feels secure, even if unfulfilled. Destiny challenges this security not out of cruelty, but necessity. Growth cannot occur without tension, and transformation cannot unfold without friction. When destiny appears, it does so by disturbing the false equilibrium that has been mistaken for peace. This disturbance often manifests as loss, confusion, or emotional upheaval. Relationships end unexpectedly, certainties dissolve, desires emerge that contradict long-held plans. These moments feel like failure or chaos, yet they carry an underlying intelligence. Destiny does not destroy without purpose, it dismantles what has become too small for the evolving self. The discomfort is not random, it is directional. Because destiny operates beyond conscious control, it feels intrusive. It does not ask for permission, nor does it wait until one feels ready. It enters through experiences that overwhelm rational explanation, forcing the individual to confront questions they have avoided. The mind may interpret this as misfortune, but the psyche recognizes it as a summons. What is being disrupted is not life itself, but the illusion that life can remain unchanged. Disruption exposes the gap between the life one lives and the life one is meant to grow into. Comfort numbs this awareness, allowing dissatisfaction to become tolerable. Destiny, however, removes the numbness. It sharpens perception and intensifies emotion, making avoidance impossible. In this way, discomfort becomes a form of truth. It reveals what no longer aligns with the deeper direction of the self. This is why moments of destiny are often accompanied by fear. Fear signals a threat to identity. The roles, beliefs, and narratives that once provided orientation begin to lose their authority. Destiny asks not for reassurance, but for courage. The courage to step into uncertainty without guarantees. It does not offer immediate rewards, only the promise of authenticity earned through struggle. Many resist destiny because they mistake comfort for happiness. Yet comfort often sustains stagnation, while disruption creates the conditions for meaning. What feels like collapse is frequently a reorganization at a deeper level. The psyche rearranges itself around new values, new truths, and new possibilities that could not emerge within the old structure. In time, what once felt like disruption may be recognized as alignment. The chaos reveals an order that was invisible before the breakdown. Destiny does not comfort, because comfort would keep one asleep. It disrupts because awakening requires disturbance. Through uncertainty and upheaval, destiny guides not toward ease, but toward a life that is more honest, more whole, and more deeply one's own. Resistance to love is rarely about the other person. It is far more intimate and far more unsettling than that. At its core, resistance to love is resistance to inner transformation. Love does not merely invite connection, it demands change. It threatens the familiar structures of identity that the mind has worked hard to construct and protect. To resist love is often an unconscious attempt to preserve a version of the self that feels safer than the unknown self-love would awaken. When love approaches, it exposes the inner landscape that has been carefully managed. Old wounds, unresolved grief, unmet needs, and long-buried fears begin to surface. This exposure feels dangerous to the ego, which thrives on control and predictability. The ego prefers roles it knows how to perform: strength, detachment, independence, emotional restraint. Love weakens these defenses by making vulnerability unavoidable. In this sense, love is not resisted because it is weak, but because it is powerful. Many people mistake emotional discomfort for incompatibility. They interpret anxiety, fear, or confusion as signs that something is wrong. Not realizing these feelings are signals of inner movement. Love activates areas of the psyche that have remained dormant, and what has been dormant often carries unresolved pain. Resistance becomes a way to avoid reopening these internal chambers. It is easier to withdraw from connection than to confront what connection reveals. Resistance often disguises itself as rationality. One may list practical reasons, timing issues, or perceived flaws in the other person. While these reasons may appear logical, they often function as psychological armor. The mind creates explanations to justify what the deeper self is afraid to face. The fear is not of love itself, but of the internal reorganization love requires. To truly love means to relinquish old self-definitions and allow new values to emerge. Inner transformation involves loss before renewal. The self that existed before love cannot remain intact. Certain illusions must dissolve, including the belief that one is fully self-sufficient or emotionally invulnerable. Love exposes dependency, longing, and the desire to be seen. For those who have learned to survive by suppressing these needs, love feels like a threat to survival itself. Resistance then becomes a protective reflex, not a conscious choice, yet what is resisted does not disappear. Suppressed love often returns in other forms: restlessness, dissatisfaction, or a persistent sense of incompleteness. The psyche continues to seek integration, even when the conscious mind refuses. Resistance delays transformation, but it cannot eliminate the underlying call. The tension between desire and fear becomes a source of inner conflict, shaping behavior in subtle and often self-sabotaging ways. To allow love is to accept transformation without guarantees. It requires surrendering the illusion of control and stepping into psychological uncertainty. This surrender does not mean losing oneself, but encountering oneself more fully. Love rearranges the inner world, forcing honesty where avoidance once ruled. Resistance protects a familiar self, but at the cost of growth. In this way, resisting love is not an act of strength, but a refusal to become who one is capable of becoming. The beloved does not create the shadow. They reveal what was already there, waiting beyond the reach of conscious awareness. The shadow is formed long before love appears, shaped by what was rejected, suppressed, or deemed unacceptable in the process of becoming a socially functional self. Long before the beloved arrives, the psyche has already hidden parts of itself in darkness. Love merely turns on the light. When someone enters our life and stirs intense emotion, desire, jealousy, fear, longing, anger, it is tempting to believe they are the cause of this inner turbulence. Yet no human being has the power to manufacture psychological material that does not already exist. The beloved acts as a mirror, reflecting the inner conflicts that were previously dormant or carefully controlled. What feels like provocation is often recognition. The shadow contains traits we disowned in order to be accepted or to survive emotionally. Vulnerability may have been buried under self-reliance. Need may have been masked as independence. Rage may have been silenced in favor of agreeableness. When love enters, these suppressed elements begin to stir because intimacy reduces the distance between conscious identity and unconscious truth. The beloved does not introduce these traits. They destabilize the defenses that kept them hidden. This is why love often feels threatening. The beloved sees us in ways that bypass performance and self-image. Their presence makes it harder to maintain the illusion of wholeness we constructed alone. Emotional reactions become exaggerated, confusing, and difficult to manage. The ego protests, insisting that the problem lies outside, yet the intensity of the reaction points inward. What emerges is not foreign, it is familiar, though long denied. Projection plays a crucial role in this process. We unconsciously place disowned aspects of ourselves onto the beloved, idealizing or condemning them for qualities that originate within us. We may accuse them of being too demanding, too distant, too controlling, or too unpredictable, without recognizing that these qualities mirror inner tensions we have not integrated. The beloved becomes the screen upon which the shadow is projected, making it visible through relationship. This revelation can feel deeply unsettling. The shadow rarely appears as something noble or flattering. It emerges through insecurity, possessiveness, fear of abandonment, or emotional dependency. Because these qualities conflict with the image we hold of ourselves, the psyche seeks an external cause. Blaming the beloved becomes easier than acknowledging the internal split love has exposed, yet this exposure is not an act of harm. It is an invitation to wholeness. Without relationship, the shadow often remains unchallenged, expressed indirectly through dissatisfaction, numbness, or repetitive patterns. Love concentrates psychological material, bringing it to the surface where it can no longer be ignored. The beloved, knowingly or not, becomes a catalyst for self-encounter. To recognize that the beloved reveals the shadow is to reclaim responsibility for one's inner life. It shifts the question from, what are they doing to me, to what is being awakened within me. This shift transforms love from a battlefield into a mirror. The pain does not disappear, but it gains meaning. What is revealed is not evidence of failure, but proof that the psyche is seeking integration and that love has reached deep enough to make what was hidden finally visible. Obstacles in a relationship are often mistaken as evidence of incompatibility, yet more often they are tests of psychological readiness rather than proof that two people do not belong together. When connection is superficial, challenges dissolve interest quickly, but when a bond reaches deeper layers of the psyche, obstacles emerge with intensity, not to separate, but to reveal whether the individuals involved are capable of the inner work required to sustain true connection. Compatibility is usually understood in terms of shared interests, values, or lifestyles. While these factors create ease, they do not determine depth. Psychological readiness, on the other hand, determines whether a person can tolerate vulnerability, uncertainty, and transformation. Obstacles arise precisely at the points where inner growth is required. They press against emotional limits, exposing fears, defenses, and unresolved conflicts that were invisible during the early stages of attraction. Timing issues, distance, external pressure, and emotional misunderstandings are often interpreted as signs that something is fundamentally wrong. Yet these challenges frequently surface when attachment deepens and unconscious material is activated. As emotional stakes rise, the psyche reacts by testing its own capacity for closeness. Anxiety increases, control strategies appear, and avoidance becomes tempting. The obstacle is not the situation itself, but the inner response it provokes. Many retreat at this stage believing that love should feel effortless if it is right. This belief confuses harmony with health. Psychological readiness does not mean the absence of struggle. It means the ability to remain present within it. Obstacles reveal whether one can regulate emotion, communicate honestly, and tolerate discomfort without fleeing or attacking. These are capacities developed through self-awareness, not romantic fate. Obstacles also challenge unconscious patterns learned in earlier relationships. Old attachment wounds resurface, replaying familiar scripts of abandonment, rejection, or loss of autonomy. The psyche attempts to resolve unfinished emotional business through present connection. When these patterns emerge, the relationship feels strained. But what is actually occurring is an opportunity for integration. The obstacle highlights where the individual is still governed by the past. When psychological readiness is lacking, obstacles feel overwhelming and personal. They trigger blame, withdrawal, or self-protection. When readiness is present, the same obstacles become informative rather than destructive. They reveal where growth is needed, where boundaries must be clarified, and where emotional responsibility must be claimed. The relationship becomes a space for conscious engagement rather than unconscious repetition. True connection does not eliminate obstacles, it brings them into focus. Compatibility may determine whether two people enjoy each other, but readiness determines whether they can evolve together. Obstacles test patience, resilience, and emotional maturity. They ask whether one can remain open when certainty disappears and stay grounded when fear arises. What separates enduring love from fleeting connection is not the absence of difficulty, but the willingness to meet difficulty without abandoning oneself or the other. Obstacles are not verdicts on love, they are examinations of inner preparedness. They do not ask, do you match? They ask, are you ready to grow? True love does not arrive to complete what is missing in a person. It arrives to integrate what has been divided within them. Wholeness is not achieved by adding another person to one's life, but by allowing relationship to reunite the fragmented parts of the self. True love functions as a psychological process through which inner contradictions are brought into dialogue, tension is held consciously, and a more unified self gradually emerges. Most people enter relationships seeking relief from loneliness, pain, or inner conflict. They hope love will soothe discomfort and provide certainty. Yet true love often does the opposite at first. It intensifies awareness of inner splits that were previously manageable or ignored. Strength confronts vulnerability. Independence meets longing. Control encounters surrender. These opposing forces exist within every individual, but love makes them impossible to deny. Integration requires the capacity to hold opposites without collapsing into extremes. True love creates a relational space where this holding becomes possible. In the presence of another who matters deeply, the psyche can no longer maintain rigid defenses. Emotions flow more freely, reactions become more honest, and contradictions surface naturally. The individual is confronted with their own complexity not as a problem to be fixed, but as a reality to be accepted. Wholeness emerges when these inner parts are no longer rejected or projected. In early stages, disowned traits are often placed onto the beloved. One may idealize them as strong, nurturing, or complete, while unconsciously denying those same qualities within. Over time, if love is allowed to mature, projection withdraws. The qualities admired or feared in the other are recognized as latent aspects of the self. The beloved becomes less of a fantasy and more of a partner in reality. This process is neither smooth nor comfortable. Integration involves grief for old identities that can no longer be sustained. The image of oneself as invulnerable, self-sufficient, or morally consistent may have to dissolve. Love demands authenticity, and authenticity requires letting go of masks. Wholeness is not perfection, it is the acceptance of imperfection without fragmentation. True love also integrates past and present. Unresolved emotional wounds often resurface within intimate relationships. Rather than being signs of dysfunction, these resurfacing patterns indicate that the psyche feels safe enough to revisit what was once overwhelming. Through conscious engagement, reflection, and emotional responsibility, the individual gains the opportunity to respond differently than before. In doing so, the past loses its unconscious grip. As integration deepens, inner conflict gradually transforms into inner coherence. Emotional reactions become less polarized, and self-understanding expands. One no longer needs to be only strong or only sensitive, only independent or only connected. Multiple truths can coexist. This psychological flexibility is the foundation of wholeness. True love does not erase individuality, it strengthens it. By integrating inner divisions, the individual becomes more grounded, more real, and less dependent on external validation. Love then shifts from a need to a choice, from compensation to communion. Wholeness emerges not because two halves unite, but because each person becomes more fully themselves through the courage to love and be transformed by it. So, when destiny calls, do not mistake the disruption for misfortune. Do not resist the shadow that rises or the obstacles that test you. True love is not comfortable, and it is never easy, because it is not meant to preserve what is familiar. It is meant to awaken what is whole within you. It calls you to courage, to honesty, and to transformation. Those who answer this call may lose certainty, illusions, and old identities, but they gain something far greater, a self that is deeper, truer, and finally complete. Love does not arrive to finish your story. It arrives to reveal the story that has been waiting inside you all along. When you step fully into its presence, nothing outside or within can stop the awakening it brings. And in that awakening, you will finally know that destiny was never about chance. It was always about the evolution of your soul, and the love that calls you is the path to becoming whole,